What's going on, everybody? We've got Greg Kuchan here. He's with Douglas Elliman Real Estate, and he's been in the game almost 10 years. So looking forward to hearing what he's got to say about the San Diego market, what he's doing that's separating him from the rest of the pack, and what buyers and sellers right now can do to be more competitive. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Dmitri.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to connect, and it's really good to meet you. I feel like I've heard a lot of good things about you, and so really getting face to face and getting to the core of what it is that you're doing that's helping you find the success, and how you're helping so many people with real estate here in the county. It's a big thing, so appreciate it.
Well, I'd say kind of give you a little context, because most people aren't going to know who I am, who are following you. Greg Kuchan, Douglas Elliman. I've been in the industry for just over 9 years. I've closed 141 transactions to date, with actually 94% being buyers. So that would set me as different than most of the people. Is I don't like most real estate coaches out there, because I feel like they all are in the same exact category, and they do all the exact same things of like, do open houses, cold call people, door knock on them. And it's just like, I've converted one buyer from an open house to close. And I've been doing this for 9 years, and I've done a bunch of open houses. I just am not good at pestering people to the point of converting them to a client. Like, I have been very fortunate that I work with people who know me, like me, and trust me. And I've got business from different fitness groups that I've been a part of, different networking, professional networking groups that I've been a part of. So I choose to do business with people who I get along with, who know me and like me and trust me. And then I focus my business on the client-centric business model. Here's a backstory. So traveled all over the world after college, landed in San Diego, was working in roofing. It was miserable. It was in El Cajon. It was hot as hell. And my mom bought a triplex in Pacific Beach as an investment property and a retirement plan for her to move out here. Pretty good idea. Well, she used me to get an owner-occupied interest rate. So she got a lower interest rate, plus she got a built-in property manager. So I had to do
Smart.
I renovated all 3 of the houses. I found all the tenants. I did all the management stuff until my younger brother moved into San Diego. Then he started helping me out. It was a family affair. But I was really unhappy with roofing. I was doing CrossFit as well, and I needed to find something else. And I was like, you know what? Real estate's 3 months, $1,000, and I'll get my license. If it doesn't work out, I've spent more money on stuff that I've wasted way more inefficiently. So coming from that mindset, you're a reluctant real estate agent who has never been a salesperson. I was a scuba instructor and a boat captain in the Caribbean. I'm not a salesperson at all. So I focus more on the idea of a business consultant and looking at the entire picture of how to partner up with people who knew more than me. So I've been on teams almost my entire career. 7.5 years of my 9 years have been on a team. And then when I went on my own, it was making sure that I had all the other business professionals and networks that could support, I'm working with really good CPAs, wealth advisors, trust attorneys, any other lawyer out there, business and acquisition lawyers. And so that you provide really, really good service to them, so that when they have a client who needs, services, they refer them over to you.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so if I understand correctly, it was more so that first property working with your mom that got you into the real estate game, gave you that taste, and made you decide.
Yeah,
right,
and I was just a buyer. I wasn't an agent. She wasn't my first transaction. I was just a buyer along for the process. But it was it's either that or go back to school for 5 years, get $100,000 into debt. And at that point, I was already 28 years old and into 3 different careers. Didn't sound appealing at all. So it was just all right, this is at least a low cost entry into real estate.
So you found your way in, decided to stick with it, figured out, it's something that you can do, something you're good at, people like you, you're able to take them through the process a little bit easier or a lot easier than what their experience is with most folks, right? So what would you say was kind of the differentiator for you? Is it just the no salesy type of approach, or what is it that's separating you from the rest of the buyer's agents out there? Because obviously there's something going on.
I would say it's a combination of the business model that I luckily fell into. Was a Joe Stump buy referral only is this guy practices, and and that's how I learned. And he'd already been in the business for 20 years. And so I was essentially a showing agent for his business. He was the #1 guy on Yelp, and he got almost all of his business from past clients, and new business was from Yelp. And it was just a very efficient machine, and it was more business that he could handle. So it was him. He did almost all the listings, and he had when I was there was 4 buyers agents on his team, and we were closing over 100 transactions as an entire office, and that allowed me to, when I started in real estate, there was no stakes for me because he did all the marketing. He brought in the new clients, and I sat through consultations. So I went from consultation to close, and that's it. They weren't my clients afterwards, and I didn't acquire the clients. Every new real estate agent is gonna mess up a deal here and there.
Yeah.
And there's just a certain level of, you have to have enough reps under your belt before you can really intuitively see 10 steps ahead. And so, by the time I had left working with the first brokerage, I had closed, I think it was 68 transactions in 3.5 years. My last year, I closed 25 transactions. And so I became a really, really good transactional agent. But I was getting a smaller cut of the commission because I wasn't acquiring the clients. I didn't do any of the follow-ups or the follow-through stuff. It was just, like I said, contract to close. And so when I moved on to the next team that I was on, I specifically chose a team where they were really good on the business process of being a real estate business, of like how you acquire your clients, in authentic ways that you can consistently do. The gentleman who was the lead of the team is Dave Worth. He now is a real estate coach, and he coaches top agents all across the country. And, it was the 3 years of working underneath his team until he went off and became a real estate coach. That was, invaluable from taking the very good transactional agent into being like a small business owner and treating the systems and the processes the way a business would, and not just like a solo one-off agent where you're, again, cold calling people, door knocking, and you're focusing 60% of your effort into like the sales stuff.
Yeah.
And you're not really building rapport with people, in my opinion, that way. I don't know the stats of it, but I would bet you money that, my business model has a much higher referral and return and repeat business than someone who's banging cold calls and door knocking for their new client acquisition. I mean, one of my best new client activities that I've ever did was pre-COVID. I had a barbecue in my backyard. 90% of the time my shirt was off, I was half drunk, and there was about 35 people in my backyard hanging out, having a good time, and I called it potluck around the world. And every month it was a different region of the world. We would everybody would bring a side dish, and I'd make the main dish. And it was just a good time in my backyard. And I helped probably 60% of the people who showed up to those parties month over month to buy or sell a house.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. You kind of get to live your life. That's work-life balance right there. So now that you are in the driver's seat of the business, right? Now that you're, acquiring your own business and working your own referrals, and you're able to build your book of business, what would you say to your clients? What would you say you're known for?
I'm glad you said clients. I care, which I know is so ethereal, but I take my fiduciary responsibility at heart. I know it's just a line in the buyer's representation agreement that you should put your client's needs above yours before, anything else, but truly looking out for their best interest. And, that comes to like talking people out of selling their property, of like, no, you should really hold on to this because you bought it in 2021, you have a 2.5% interest rate. Like, do you know how much rents are? Here, look at this rent sheet of what you could get for rents right now. Did you know that you can use 75% of your stated rental income, to offset, your mortgage for your night, that type of stuff. I know that's more your world. But like looking at the entire picture of real estate as an avenue for lifelong wealth and intergenerational wealth. Here's a fun story of when my wife and I bought the house that we're in right now. There was a tenant living here, and so we had a 30-day rent back with the tenant. And we were at D Street and we had found a stick and we were drawing in the sand the floor plan of the house and trying to figure out, all right, our bed will go here, the dinner table will go here, like, and we're like planning out where our furniture will go. And this 80-year-old gentleman came up from behind us and was like, hey kids, what you doing? And we're like, oh dude, we just bought a house, and this is what we're doing. And he goes, you know, it was 1988 and interest rates were 13%. I had no idea how I got an 11% mortgage. I bought a $100,000 house, which mind you back then was a luxury home in San Diego. He said I had a stay-at-home wife, 2 kids, and I had no idea how I was gonna make the mortgage every month. But now that same house that I own is on 3rd and D. If you know anything about Encinitas real estate, that dude has like a $7 million home, bare minimum. I don't need to even look at the condition of it. Just knowing that it's on 3rd and D, it's an expensive house. But the more you talk to people of the elder generation who have bought a long time ago and held on for a really long time, they understand like that value just keeps going up with inflation, with, you know, supply and demand, and that like the longer you hold on to it, the better that becomes. When you talk to people kind of closer to our age, you know, that are in, you know, in that peak first-time home buyer age range, it's difficult. And it is. Interest rates are 7%, 7.5%, wherever they're floating at nowadays, and depending on your loan program and credit score and all that fun stuff. And you don't want to, you know, downplay how difficult it is to buy a house in 2024 in San Diego. But in 1989, when the guy bought a $100,000 house, which was less than our down payment on this house, he was freaking out as well. And when you talk to the different generations, you see the different mindsets of someone who's, say, not quite retired and not willing to sell their house yet because they're like, well, I wouldn't even pay the, you know, I got a client, I'm selling their house, you know, it's worth like $1.2 million. They're like, I can't even afford my own house that I live in right now. Like, where am I gonna go? What am I gonna do? You know? And so they're in that interesting phase of life where they've passed their peak earning years, and the value of real estate has just continued to go, and they don't know what they're gonna do. So that's why we're seeing so many boomers holding on to their houses until they die, is because they just can't fathom paying what San Diego real estate prices are. And then you go talk to somebody who's 21, 22, fresh out of college, got a good job, and guess what? It is what it is. If you want to buy a house in San Diego, the median sales price for all properties is $930,000 this week. It was $960 last week, so every week it changes a lot. But let's say it's just around $1 million to buy a house in San Diego, right? When this guy bought it in 1980, it was like $40,000 to buy a house in 1987, right?
Yeah.
And so it's looking at it as a whole of, here, I'll tell you another story. I'm really talkative, sorry. I just helped a client sell a home. He inherited his mother's home, free and clear. No mortgage on it. He needed to invest about $70,000 into the house to get it ready for the market. When I met him, he thought the house was worth $500,000. I laughed at his face and said, sir, I could sell your house in about 5 minutes for at least $900,000 right now, and I haven't even stepped in the front door yet. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah. So then after we renovated the house and we got the house on the market, it sold for $1.255. The guy walked away net cash $1.1 million after all expenses, real estate commissions, fees, everything that he had done, $1.1 million in his pocket, right? And so now he was able to use, you know, the gift that his mother gave him, a paid off free and clear house. He bought a retirement home in Arizona, and now he's going to have a lower tax basis. He's going to have no monthly mortgage, and the only thing he has to pay for is insurance and groceries for the rest of his life. And he's like 50.
Set. He's good to go.
So it's like, it's taking the long-term view of real estate as a wealth collection vehicle, as something that can change someone's life. I mean, you look at crime statistics, you look at, you know, stability, mental health, like having a home that your family owns compared to renting and moving every few years and having that anxiety of like rents going up every year no matter what, you know, kind of thing, puts that pressure on your parents, then that overloads to the kids. It's a lot. It's emotion. And I care a lot about like the overall well-being of my clients. And that's why it's really hard to convince somebody at an open house to have the 20-minute conversation we've already had with an attention span of 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is the difference between somebody who is trying to make a sale and somebody who is in it professionally and is here to help people. And, you know, like most of us, we encounter salespeople all the time, and you can tell the people who are just there to sell and the people who actually care. And I think that's, you know, a great point that you've made, because we can sense that almost immediately, right?
It's commission breath.
Exactly. Does somebody care, or are they just trying to make a sale? And the blocks go up, you know, right away. So I think that is a huge factor in this industry. I think we need more of that. I mean, what is it? 50%. I think the statistic is 50% of realtors, like everybody who's licensed, you know, 50% of them only do like one transaction a year.
Oh, I'll give you better stats. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. 80% of all real estate agents fail within their first year. 97% do not renew their license. Here's another fun one. Guess how many real estate agents are licensed in San Diego, approximately?
I'm going to take a wild guess here. I'm going to say about 1,000.
30,000.
30,000.
So there's 10 real estate agents, approximately, for every one house that's on the market.
That's
so
a lot of noise
there's
to cut through.
5 real estate agents per every side of the transaction. But a lot of them are property managers. A lot of them got their license, never do anything with it. You know, like there's a lot who don't do anything. Are you familiar with Pareto's principle, like 80-20?
Yes.
So in San Diego, it's more like 90-10. 90% of the business is done by 10% of the agents. And that's why you see over and over again, the names that we're all very familiar with that are on the top of the list is because they've built up a business, they've built up a career, and they've built a reputation that people can trust.
That's it right there. It's the reputation, because I've encountered those people multiple times on different transactions as the loan officer, and they all care. They, like you, they care a lot, right? The top dogs, they do care a lot about just about every single point of the transaction. They're much more involved, and some people are more involved than others, but it's a difference maker.
It's an ease of the business, though, where if you're not living paycheck to paycheck and you're not so worried about the next transaction, then you can actually focus like on the daily activities that you need to be doing in order to produce business. I mean, we still are salespeople. We are, you know, outside salespeople, if you use like, you know, normal business terms, where we need to go out there, we need to go meet people. I mean, it's a very personable business. You know, if you're not doing the daily activities to interact with, you know, your current clients, your past clients, your future clients. And the one nice thing about our industry is that like everybody and anybody could be a future client. And so that's why, like, one, you need to be constantly conscious of that. And 2, you need to be you can do it any way that you want. If you're really good at cold calling, cold call. You'll have a phenomenal business. If you're really good at door knocking, do door knocking. I don't care. I don't want to do those things, and I'm not going to do them consistently. And like, I'm 9.5 years in, and like, I am nowhere near retiring. Like, I just bought this house. I got a mortgage on it. You know, I'm not going anywhere.
Work
so
to do.
I'm probably going to be doing this for 20 more years. So it's like, it's looking 20 years out and like making sure that, you know, the 56-year-old Greg looks back at the 36-year-old Greg and is happy and is like, you're doing the right things. You're on the right path. You may not see it right now, but like, you're going in the right direction. And your clients who are working with you right now, like, their kids are going to be working with
exactly.
you know, and looking that far out, where it's not today's business, it's 5 years business.
Yeah, you're going to want to kiss yourself. Like, by the time you get to that point, you've got this book of business. All these people are, you know, like you said, sending you their family or their kids. You know, once it gets to that point, like, enough time has gone by, and you can kind of see that impact full circle like 3 or 4 times with, you know, each different client. And I think that is a beautiful thing about this business. And like you said, you're nowhere near retiring. I feel like this is a great business to have in retirement too, because
a lot of people do it in retirement.
Why wouldn't you? You know, you get to get out and meet people. You get to check out what's going on in the city. You get to check out the new real estate. These are things that, you know, you kind of want to do in retirement anyway. Check stuff out, be out there. And if you're not thirsty for new business because you already have that book of business and you already have your reputation, then, I mean, why stop? You know, you've built it up so much. And one thing that you mentioned that I think is super important is you mentioned how hard it is for young people looking at this market and thinking, oh my God, I need $900,000 just to get my foot in the door. What would you tell those people who know that they need to buy a house? They understand the wealth creation vehicle that it is. What would you tell them in terms of sticking with it, not losing hope?
Yeah.
What can they do to be more competitive aside from $100,000 from the parents?
Yeah. Okay. So finances aside, right? Like it's a mindset shift. So we'll talk directly at the camera for you listening right now, if you still are right now. It's the mindset shift of knowing that no matter how old you are, no matter how much money you make, buying a house is one of the 5 most expensive things that you're gonna do in your entire life, right? And it doesn't matter if it's your first or 10th house that you buy. It's expensive every single time. The monthly payments are difficult. You wanna make sure that you're staying within a comfortable range. And so if you are in that first-time home buyer status of life right now, I'm not a wealth advisor, I'm not a CPA, so go speak to licensed professionals in those regions, but this is what my wealth advisor told me, is that when you start saving, go get a high yield savings account. So like Barclays, it's an online, no minimum balance needed, and it has a 4.6%, the hell am I talking about?
Return,
there we go. On the money that you put into it. So, how much money do I put into it? Okay, go on Zillow. You scroll down a little bit and you'll see how much the monthly payment, is going to be for the mortgage. It pre-populates 20% and usually a little bit lower than what current market values are. So, mess with that. If you can't put 20% down, change it to 5, 10%, whatever you can put down, and see whatever that monthly payment plugs out and Zillow does for you, right? Take that number and whatever you're paying in rent and groceries and insurance and utilities, all that fun stuff, minus that off. Whatever's left over, put that money into the high yield savings account. So using simple numbers, if it says $5,000 a month would be the mortgage that you'd have to pay in order to buy this house that you're looking at on Zillow, all right, subtract your $3,000 rent and your $400 insurance and all these other things, like to live your life, right? And then whatever's left over, put that, say, $300 to $500 a month into the high yield savings account. After about 3 to 6 months, 2 things will happen. 1, you'll understand if that monthly payment is something that you can stomach. And 2, you've started saving for your down payment. So it's a really functional first steps for people to have the litmus test to figure out, can I afford this house? Because the right time to buy is when you can afford it. It doesn't matter what the interest rates are doing. It doesn't matter. I mean, we have 3.3 million people in San Diego. And yesterday when I ran the numbers, we had just under 4,000 homes on the market. That's 10,000 homes less than we had pre-pandemic. So yeah, it's difficult no matter what. And whether the interest rates are at 8% like they were for a while, or they're at 3%, the really thing that's going to be different is how many people who are on the sidelines right now who are actually going to be in the game. Is the lower the interest rate, the more people who are looky-loos become, actual buyers. And yes, interest rates are a little bit higher. Yes, prices are a little bit higher. But if you look at like the 10-year or the 50-year horizon, you're locking in your monthly payment at 2024 cost of living. 10 years from now, you're going to be laughing at that $5,000 a month and go, fuck, and thank God I locked it in at that price. And so
100%.
That's where you start with the mindset of like, if you're going to do it, all right. First step is start saving some money. Figure out what the monthly payment is it's going to be. Can I stomach it? Okay, cool. You're already looking on Zillow and Redfin and all the other apps because that's fun. I mean, SNL made a skit about it. Everybody does it. You look at the $10 million house that you may not ever be able to afford, but like it's still cool to look at because $10 million, it's a nice house. It's cool architecture. I do it all the time. And so, and then that's when it's like, okay, cool, sit down with some professionals. People that like, and trust. If you're a communicative person, high I, talkative person, go talk to people, figure out, who's going to be best fit for you. If you're more introverted engineer type, numbers and cents, go look online for online reviews or whatever. But just like find a business professional, interview a couple of people, figure out who's going to have your best interest at heart, and then start working with them, and they'll be able to help you through the process.
That's great advice. Yeah, absolutely.
And one other thing that actually sets me apart with this whole NAR lawsuit and all this horse hockey that's really not going to change anything here in California, is I've been doing a buyer consultation for 9.5 years now. I've been getting buyer representation agreements signed for 9.5 years now. Now, luckily, it was because that's how I was taught, and I knew no other different. All those new real estate agents, because again, 97% don't renew their license, but we got about 30,000 real estate agents. All those new ones coming in aren't going to know anything different than getting a buyer representation signed, vying for your commission and figuring out like your value as a business owner and what you provide for your clients, and making sure that you negotiate the win so that the client wins the home and you'll get paid for it. It may not be your 4% that you want, but it may be a 2% or 1.5%, but like it's a business decision of like, are you gonna get the client the house and the deal? Okay, cool. Are you gonna get the commission paid for by the seller? Or are you gonna get the commission paid for by the buyer? At the end of the day, it's just part of the negotiations. And we've been doing it like this in California for decades. It's just that a lawsuit in some other state is highlighting that over here. And it's like, oh, we're supposed to be doing our business how? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. We are supposed to give people options in this industry and not steer them towards one lender or one escrow company or one lawyer. You have to give people options and make sure you're finding them the best person who will best serve them that they want to work with. Not because you're getting some sort of, oh, I give you a business, you give me business kind of thing. It's like, it's ultimately up to the client who chooses the people who they work with.
100%. I love that. That's great advice. And on the flip side of that, what would you say for those new buyers are some common mistakes that they're going to want to avoid?
If you're buying a single family home, always get a sewer inspection.
Sewer inspection?
Sewer line inspection.
Okay, that's one I haven't heard yet.
$250, $300 will save you $30,000 if something's wrong with that. Most homes in San Diego are built pre-1980. Cast iron that was installed in 1960 is completely crumbling, and that is the vast majority of inventory in our San Diego homes. If the house has cast iron, you're actually better off if it was like the North Park 1905 built home that had cast iron. I don't know how or when they changed the formula or whatever. That stuff's doing fine. Clay pipes doing fine, but like 1970s to 1980s cast iron, that stuff is crumbling, pitting, and falling apart.
That is a great point, because I recently had a client who bought a house, and like 3 or 4 months later, they had a huge sewage problem. They had stuff backing up through their bathtub, and it was crazy. They had family coming into town, and it was going to be, the house was unlivable, basically. Yeah. Luckily or not.
Homeowners insurance covered it?
No, not likely. But they were able to go after the seller, because it was something, they were able to prove that the seller knew about this issue. And
the thing is, did they go to court?
But yes, they had to go to court. They
Do
had
you want
to
to
pay
go?
for everything.
You want to get sued?
Exactly.
No, $300 to go to a lawsuit.
Right. So it's a big deal. Those are the kind of tips that I really love from a buyer's agent too, because I like to feel like my clients, they're in good hands, right? And vice versa, right? I'm sure you're like, if your client's working with a lender, you want to make sure that lender has, all of their best interests at heart, right?
Yeah.
So same thing on my side of it.
Yeah.
To know that I'm working with a real estate agent who is actually looking at the finer details, instead of just being like, hey, I'll show you the house. Hey, I'll write up the contract. Hey, I'll do the final inspection or the final walkthrough with you. Those are all things that are already part of the job, but things like this, little bits of information that you know about the county, about the city, about each individual zip code and each individual street, it goes a really long way,
Another big tip is right now with insurance and condos and all properties, get talk to an insurance broker right away and get an insurance quote within the first 48 hours of opening escrow.
And be prepared to get like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do a little digging, right?
Because there's so many companies pulling out of California, and there's so many new laws and regulations that, like, if you're putting less than 5% or less than 10% down, you have to do a full condo certification inspection. But if you're putting more than 10% down, then you don't have to do a full. You can do a limited condo cert, which is more his world. But
you know your stuff. I love it.
But like, those things matter though. Is like knowing that if you're putting less than 10% down, it's like, hey, we got to make sure we're reading every HOA document, every rules, regulations. You should be doing that anyways. Most people skim over the most important stuff. And then they get upset later of like, I didn't know I couldn't do X, Y, and Z. It was like, it was in your disclosures. Like, you signed at the bottom of it. That's one thing that I don't like about DocuSign, actually.
You can just go to next,
It
right?
that is the standard setting. You have to then consciously scroll back up, and you don't know where because it goes so fast, to the next signature line, and it could have passed 1 page or 30 pages, and people are just like, all right, let's get it through. I trust, Dmetri.
Yeah, that's a big
Read
deal.
your contracts. Read your
contract.
HOA documents. Understand what's going on with your HOA. The financials make absolutely no sense. Working with the HOA when you're still a buyer and not a homeowner is extremely difficult. So if you do have to buy a condo, HOA property managers get paid very little money, and they manage thousands of residents in multiple different properties. And it's kind of one of those, you pay for what you get. And unfortunately, they don't get paid much, and they're stretched thin, and it's really hard. And if you're going to make an opportunity of making, say, $50,000 a year or $80,000 a year, like, most people are going to want to get paid a little bit more. So, like, it's just, you don't deal with a lot of super cheery HOA property manager people. And it's part of the system, and it's terrible. And, it's, not many people go on Yelp and post, well, I shouldn't say that. Not many people go on Yelp and post positive reviews about their HOA board. It's you only go there to complain. You never go there to praise someone, because it's an industry when you do everything right, that's just your job, and I expect you to do it all right. If there's a problem, then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. Speaking of hell, you have to raise hell if you want to get anything done in process from the HOA side.
Unfortunately, if you're working with a listing agent who knows what they're doing, so like when I prepare a house for sale, I tell all my clients that, like, hey, if you want to do this right, we need a 2-week lead time. From when we sign the contract and start getting photos taken to we get you on the market, we need 2 weeks. And that's for many, many different reasons. One is so that we actually can have time to build the storyboard, to build the marketing plan to sell the house. But then also, if you're in a condo, or if you got to figure out what's going on and fill out all the seller's disclosures, so that when the buyer shows up and you accept an offer, it's day one. Here you go. Here's everything. Start reviewing it right now. And that saves so much time and effort and emotional bandwidth from the buyers and the buyer's agent. But it's just, unfortunately, you'll see so many people get a listing agreement signed, and it's on the market with either iPhone photos, no photos, coming soon, for weeks on end, instead of just like holding it off and actually building a marketing plan and figuring out how to actually present the property appropriately onto the market. It's all encompassing. I mean, the old saying of how you do anything is how you do everything. And the one thing that I really pride myself on from the people who I learned from and take going forward is systems and processes. I've closed over 140 transactions, and it's like I have almost every email I've ever sent turned into some sort of template so that I can just kind of customize it a little bit. It's not because I'm a robot, but it's like I've sent this email 500 times. Like, why would I rewrite it every single time? No, I have a system, I have a process, I have a folder for like when you're in the first 10 days of escrow, before, middle, after, all of it. Like, it is a business, it is a system, and with the long-term goal of, being able to step out of the business or step back and say coach more or have a team or something like that. But if you don't build the system and the process, like, how are you going to go on vacation? How are you going to live your life? Because, like, are you from San Diego originally?
Alaska.
I'm from Wisconsin. Cold
Hey,
fucking places.
yeah.
We didn't want to be there. We got out. You know why we moved here? Because I can do this every single day. I can surf. I can, go in the mountains. I can go camping. I can go on the beach. We live here because it's an amazing place to live. We have 65 and sunny all year round, besides May, Gray, June, Gloom, which is right now. But it is a lifestyle. And so focusing and understanding, like, what lifestyle do you want to live? Because if you want to be a country folk and shoot guns, like, we got that in San Diego.
We do.
You want to live in a big city? If you've lived in a big city before, it's not a real big city, but it's the closest thing you can get in San Diego, which is downtown.
It's like the happy medium.
Yeah, so it's like we got a little bit of everything, and it's just a matter of knowing where it is and what you want and where do you want to live, and like how do you want to engineer your life? Because like I'm pretty sure Alaska wasn't the long-term goal. At a certain point, you're like, hey, I should probably check out those lower 48.
That's exactly it. Exactly it. Oh man, it's really refreshing talking to you about this because I can tell you've done your homework, right? Behind the scenes in terms of each different transaction and taking away something from that transaction to build your knowledge and become better at this. And that's, I think that's a big contributing factor to why you've been so successful. So, and then on my side of it, hearing you talk about, what you would do as a listing agent on a condo and things like that, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much, because it's it's hard sometimes. Some of these listing agents, they want to just sell the home. They just want to be done with it. They don't want to put in the extra effort and learn from these different mistakes and, try to make it easier for the client. And you can feel it.
I don't have the data behind it because I'm not asking people, hey, how do you get your business? But I can almost guarantee that there is a very high correlation of people who work if they acquire new business by doing things they like to do, interacting with people they like to do it, or people who are doing the more salesy things. Because again, if you're focusing on the next transaction, the next cold call, oh my God, I got to do my 2-hour prospecting, block again, put on your headset, go on your speed dialer and, well, hello, I see that you own, I mean, I manage my mom's properties. I'm on a couple of titles for some of those and stuff like that. I get those calls all the time. And you can just hear the defeat in the voice. And it's cool, so I'm going to work with you. You sound super defeated on the phone right now. I don't know how they convince people to work with them. But if that's your job, that you have to do that 2, 3, 4 hours a day, every single day, yeah, you're going to want to get through the sales. Because let's be honest, in real estate, when you have a client under contract, you're unemployed. Because you don't get paid till that transaction closes. And if you're focusing all your effort on that one transaction, you're missing out on all of the other business and activities that you should be doing. And so when you're under contract as a real estate agent, I'm unemployed, and looking at it that way. And so it's you got to make sure that you're doing the things that you can do consistently every day to build your business, so that when you are under contract, the other things are already happening because it's just part of your daily life and your routine. And so you can focus on the client's experience of it, because if the client has a really good experience, the odds of you referring skyrocket. Them referring you business skyrockets.
And that has been the driver for you, is the referrals, is the people referring their friends and family to you because they know you, they like you, they trust you?
It's the best way to do business, in my opinion, because if you have someone introduced to you and be like, hey, I worked with Dmetri, I had crazy weird thing going on with I switched jobs and my debt to income was off, and I had this weird thing where I had a medical bill from 20 years ago that I paid, but it was affecting my credit score, and we solved all those problems. We looped in, we started at Chase, but then we switched over to United Wholesale Mortgage, but then we, and it's all of it happened behind the scenes, and 3 things went wrong, but he saved the day, and it was the best experience ever. And then afterwards he met me with a bottle of champagne, and every year afterwards he's reached back out to me and saying hey, have you gotten your annual property evaluation? I've been going over the last few years of my past clients who purchased and put less than 10% down, less than 20% down. I'm running the numbers and saying hey, Federico, good job of dropping your PMI last month and saving yourself $140 a month, because he dropped his PMI after 2 years of owning the place. Now he saves $140 a month, because you're following up, you're providing value beyond the transaction, and that's just so much easier to work with that person. They trust your opinion. They know you're professional. They know you've succeeded in the past. And it works so much better than the person you convinced off the street that doesn't really know who you are. Do you really have my best interest in heart? Are you just a paycheck? Am I just $10,000 walking down the street, and as I open every door for you?
I know that's the truth. I think it's 67% of buyers go with the loan officer that the real estate agent recommended. So whether it's a real estate agent recommended or a friend recommended, referral business is most likely going to close with the person that it was referred to, and it is all based on that trust and that social proof, and making sure that this person is going to take care of me, because it's a big thing. There's a lot of emotions involved, right? Especially as a buyer.
We joke, but we're part-time therapists.
Oh, yeah.
We're not licensed, but we do a lot of it.
People have cried on the phone with me.
Good reasons.
Good reasons. Reasons that had nothing to do with me, but just the overall emotions of the transaction, missing out on, or feeling like they missed out on a house that they bid on, finally getting the home, and it's an emotional roller coaster, especially when you're considering the risk that it takes, right? You're putting up your money, you're changing up your financial outlook for the future. It's a lot involved. Every time they get through all of that, though, everything settles.
It's the best decision
they feel much better. Yeah. They know that they did the right thing, and that's a beautiful thing. But yes, throughout that transaction, therapist. But it's a good thing, and that plays into the fact of you got to care about your client because there's a lot going on. You got to be there for them. Now, with that being said, what would you say, where are you headed? Like, let's say over the next 5 years, where are you headed with this? What's the goal? What looks like success for you over these next 5 years?
You know, it's so hard to, because like consumer-wise, you don't really care about my goals in the sense of how many houses I sell or how many clients I help. Like as a consumer, they don't care. That's one of the things, kind of circling back to the lawsuit, the NAR lawsuit thing, is like they don't really care how we get paid. They just want the house bought or sold and with a good experience. So that's the next 5 years is, you know, making better templates, having better systems, hiring a full-time assistant, you know, being able to maximize the amount of people that I can help, and having, you know, systems and processes in place so that every single client has the exact same experience, no matter if you're buying a $300,000 house or a $30 million house. You all get the same exact experience. And it's just making sure that every year, every day, you know, you're just trying to move forward to like, all right, we're going to work on this, you know, we're going to improve that system over here, we're going to improve these graphics over there, I'm going to take this training course over here. Like I'm thinking about getting senior citizen certified, you know, it's on the board over here, something like that, a senior designation. So that, because there's so many baby boomers who are, you know, moving on to the next chapter of whatever happens after life, and they've been holding on to those houses for 40 years, you know, and like there's got to be something to do with it. And so it's presenting at hospice care facilities and, you know, senior home living facilities and stuff like that, so that like, you know, you can best help, you know, a huge population with a bunch of real estate, you know, sitting in their portfolio that they don't really know what to do with. Do your kids inherit it? Do your grandkids inherit it? Do I sell it before I die? What do I do? How do I do it? What do I do with my money? Like, what do I do with it? You know, again, I'm not a wealth advisor or anything like that, but I partner up with some pretty good ones so that we can figure out what is the best plan while you're still mentally cogent, so that you can execute on what you want with your assets moving forward. And so it's like, and then it's like helping those first-time home buyers up, of getting those people, educating them up and figuring out like how to get into that first one. You may not like your first home. Most people in San Diego don't like their first home. But guess what? Pre-COVID, the average home ownership of your first home in San Diego was 2 years, because usually by then you're making more money, the house is appreciated a bunch, you can sell it for more money than after all of the commissions and everything like that, and you can leverage the down payment plus whatever equity you gained into the next house. So you're selling stock A and buying stock B that just happens to be more expensive, but you're keeping it in the same stock portfolio. You're just moving the asset class up a little bit.
You've climbed that mountain once already.
And you're moving it up, and it's not as difficult. It's not as hard. You know, that $100,000 or whatever it took you to save in that first house, it's still sitting there. And guess what? You get it for the next one. And whatever you can add on top of it just makes it a little bit easier for that next one. You know, and it's that whole cycle of just making sure that, like, I've dealt with this scenario before, I've systemized it, I made a really good process for it, and I'm always trying to make it better, and making sure that I hit every single opportunity I can do to make sure that everybody has the same experience.
Well, Greg, that question was a test, and you passed it, you know, because a lot of people would respond with numbers for what they would like to do in terms of how many sales, how much volume, things like that, but it sounds to me like this next 5 years is about the customer experience. Yeah. And the rest will take care of itself, right? Yeah. All right. Greg Kuchan, everybody.
Thank you for the conversation.
Oh, where can everybody find you? If they want to work with you, where should they look you up?
Greg.Kuchan on Instagram, Gregory.Kuchan realtor.com for my website. Just honestly, 858-361-5568 is my phone number. Google me, watch this video, all that fun stuff. DM me. I'm super easy to find. I made it that way.
All right, man.
Have a good one.